Acting President. I rise to support the second reading of this bill put before the Chamber, before the Honourable KM, for a custody notification service. I do so noting that the Greens also have a bill before the Parliament for a custody notification service, and prior to that had called on this Chamber for urgent action on this matter and all of the recommendations of the Royal Commission into deaths in Aboriginal deaths in custody. That Royal Commission reported in 1991, and here we are in 2020, being one of the last jurisdictions to actually legislate for a custody notification service. What a custody notification service will provide is where an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person is placed in custody in this state, that they receive both a welfare check, and in New South Wales it's a call that says, "Are you okay?" or a visit that says, "Are you okay?" as well as legal support and advice. We know that that was a recommendation of the Royal Commission because of a particular case that showed, and particular situations that were systemic, where people who are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander placed into custody often have underlying health conditions, often face extreme anxiety, may well have the need for an interpreter, and certainly we know in New South Wales, which did take up very early on the option of a custody notification service, that it saves lives, that in fact following the implementation of that there was only one death in custody in this situation in New South Wales that actually occurred only because the CNS was not followed. A CNS has been proven statistically to save the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people placed in custody. In South Australia, we haven't had such a service. We've had the Aboriginal Visitor Scheme, which is not enforceable, and we have also seen a significant number of deaths in custody where it is often pointed to that perhaps had a CNS been in place, we would not be seeing those families grieve the loss of their loved one. We would not have seen deaths in custody. We would not be seeing cases years on awaiting their time before the coroner's court, or, as in the case of Wayne Fella Morrison, years into a coroner's inquest. I noted that in my speech to the Greens bill that in the case of Wayne Fella Morrison, he was not afforded access to the Aboriginal Visitor Scheme, let alone a custody notification service. We know that we don't know what happened to him. We know he'd never been placed in custody before, though. We know that somehow he ended up not in the remand centre but in Yatala. And as a member who served on the Select Committee into overcrowding in prisons, I've seen where he ended up in those first hours in custody, in the most, what you would call, Victorian prison environment, with everything that you would picture of the most horrific and frightening environment: cement floors and steel doors and no windows, and it must have been incredibly frightening for that man to be placed in that environment. We know that he died due to medical issues, and we also know a range of really concerning things, that the corrections officers refused to cooperate with the police investigation, that the corrections officers colluded in the hours after Wayne Morrison's death, that the family were not told what was going on, that the family, when they presented to the hospital, to the RA, where he was taken, were lied to and told he was not there, that the family, and particularly Latoya, was sat on the steps of this Parliament in the hours after her brother's death, grieving and mourning, and still, so many years later, without answers. as to what happened in those hours that her brother was taken into custody, having never been in custody before, and in the days, very short days that followed, how he ends up on life support, unresponsive, covered in bruises in the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and then dies. I cannot fathom the information that was provided to us by Cheryl from the ALRM, and also Change the Record in the briefing that the Honourable Kian Ma presented and provided to members of this place, that there has been some 8 deaths in custody in 5 years in South Australia, according to their calculations. I know that PASA is calling for a different way to calculate deaths, but I've got to say, if the ALRM and Change the Record is telling me that there was 8 deaths in 5 years, and I can point to at least 2, probably 3, where a CNS would have saved that life, then what on earth are we doing in terms of being so slow to legislate? I will point out the hypocrisy, though, that the Weatherill government was offered funding for 3 years of a CNS when the Honourable Kian Ma was a Minister of the Crown, and that the Weatherill government did not take up that offer. I understand the offer, that financial offer, from previously Minister Nigel Scullion, but now the current federal government, is still on the table. I understand from media reports and communications that the Marshall government will legislate for a CNS. So indeed this bill may be redundant. We will support it today, but I say we will support the second reading because the Greens have some amendments that go to the very reason why the AVS, the Aboriginal Visitor Scheme, has not worked, which is it needs to be transparent, accountable and enforceable. Because otherwise we know that when these members of what will be the Custody Notification Service turn up to a police station, that they will not be told you can't use a mobile phone to take photos of somebody's bruises, as they are currently told. They will not be told you're not allowed to enter the police station due to COVID, as they are currently told. That they will not be told denied access as to where that particular person in custody currently is in the custody system, because they have been moved several times, as currently occurs. That they will have the power, should any of those things occur, should their work be stymied or stifled by the system, that those who take the person into custody who deny that access to the Custody Notification Service will in fact be facing penalties. We have rights and responsibilities as citizens, and we afford those who place people in custody, in detention in this state, significant rights and responsibilities. They have significant power over people's lives and they should be accountable. And when we make them accountable, there should be penalties, because very lives are on the line. In the last few hours, I've received lots of messages, and I've got to commend the work of Black Lives Matter, because largely it was the impetus of that rally and the worldwide movement that has finally seen the Royal Commission's recommendations put back on the table for discussion. We know that the Closing the Gap updated report will soon continue that momentum. We know that there's another rally on July the 4th, and the numbers may not be as strong on the streets, but I hope that the political will continues to walk down this, because as Latoya Rule has posted on her Facebook page in the last half hour, her grief will not be erased. Her brother will not be brought back. And she has posted a salient point, which is, do governments make apologies when they implement services like the CNS into South Australia for the lives that were lost due to their inaction in previous years, or will they be celebrated for their, quote, achievement, #long overdue? I'm so sorry that we failed that family and so many other families who have had deaths in custody in our state because we did not implement the recommendations of the Royal Commission. This is one life-saving measure that must be implemented. I hope the government gets on and does it quickly, and I hope that this parliament today passes a piece of legislation that has enforceability and accountability.